Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are peeling back the layers on one of horror's most infamous figures to find the truth underneath the legend.
But here's a question for you. What is a monster? Is it what someone actually does, or is it the story we all decide to tell about them?
I mean, think about the classic horror villains. You know the type. The quiet, really disturbed guy who's just completely obsessed with his dead mother. Or how about this one? The terrifying killer who wears the skin of his victims. That's a staple of modern nightmares, right?
And, of course, there's the killer who wants to literally become a woman by tailoring a suit for himself out of human flesh.
Norman Bates, Leatherface, Buffalo Bill. You know these names, these titans of terror. They weren't just dreamed up out of nowhere. No, they were all inspired by one single real person, Ed Gein.
But what if I told you that the story you think you know about Ed Gein is mostly a legend? Okay, let's really dive in and separate the myth from the man. You know, the most recent version of this myth, that Netflix series Monster, is a perfect case study. It just mashes together decades of horror movie tropes with some pretty big historical distortions. It really shows you how completely fiction has taken over from the actual facts.
So you have to wonder, how did this whole myth get started in the first place? Well, to figure that out, we've got to go all the way back to Plainfield, Wisconsin in 1957. The second Gein was arrested, the press just descended on this tiny town. And the headlines? Wow, they were pure hysteria. They weren't just reporting the news, they were basically creating the first draft of the monster.
And, a lot of that initial misinformation, it didn't come from solid police work. Not at all. It came from a rival county sheriff, a guy named Herb Wanzerski. He was just eagerly feeding his own wild speculations to the press, basically creating fake news that has stuck for over 70 years. And it wasn't just the media. Even the whole psychological profile we have of Gein, a lot of that was shaped by his own interrogators. They were feeding these really incredible ideas to a man who was, by all accounts, highly suggestible and frankly just eager to please. So when they'd ask him these leading questions, his answer was always something like, "That could be, it's possible." And those passive little replies, they were taken as full-blown confessions. And just like that, theories that the investigators pretty much invented, like him wanting to become his mother, they became the absolute core of his entire mythology.
So with this sensational, ready-made story already out there, Hollywood was practically rubbing its hands together, ready to write its own layers right on top of the truth. And in doing so, they basically obscured the real man underneath forever.
And you can see how it happened. Each of these iconic horror films, they just pulled one little piece of the Gein story, and then they amplified it, they mutated it, they transformed it. It's like they kept writing over the original story again and again, until you could barely even recognize what was real anymore.
This is amazing. It just goes to show how easily a single fictional detail can become fact. Okay, so the victim's heart. It was actually found in a paper bag in the house. But in an essay, Robert Bloch, the author of Psycho, he just invented the story of it bubbling on the stove, and that's the version that has been repeated as truth ever since. Why? Okay, so after we strip away all the media hype and we push aside all the movie monsters, who was the real Ed Gein? Well, it turns out many of the most gruesome details that we all think we know about him are just fabrications. The lampshades made of human skin? His house had no electricity, no lamps. The cannibalism? Pure speculation from a DA. The truth is, while he absolutely did horrific things with human remains, the story we've all been sold has been wildly, wildly exaggerated.
The reality, it seems, was actually less monstrous and, well, more pathetic. This was a profoundly isolated man, totally stunted by a domineering mother, living in absolute filth and decay for more than a decade, with literally no one around to check on his spiraling mind.
So why does the myth keep going? I mean, even today, the answer, I think, lies in the way stories get told and retold in our modern world.
Think about it. The internet and modern media, they act as this powerful echo chamber, right? Myths and half-truths are just replicated over and over until they're accepted as absolute fact. It's just click, share, and suddenly it must be true. And this right here is the real power of a compelling story. It can completely reshape the identity of a real place, of real people, burying a complicated, sad truth under a simple, terrifying piece of fiction.
So I guess it forces us to ask a pretty difficult question. After all these decades of myths, why do we seem to prefer the horrifying monster story to the sad, pathetic reality? And maybe more importantly, what does that say about us?